The tennis world had just watched Alex walk off Berlin Open's center court. Her remarkable Cinderella run had come to an emotional end after a hard-fought semifinal loss to Linda Noskova. Fans were still trying to process the disappointment, wondering what might have been. But Alex had no intention of dwelling on the defeat. Instead of heading home to Manila or taking a few days to rest and recover, she immediately turned her attention to the biggest challenge still ahead of her. Less than 48 hours after her exit from Berlin, Alex showed up at her next tournament carrying something few people expected from her. It wasn't exhaustion. It wasn't frustration. It wasn't regret. It was pure determination. Her arrival quickly became a talking point across the tennis world. Players, coaches, and fans alike were surprised by the confidence and intensity she brought with her so soon after such a heartbreaking loss. Questions started circulating almost immediately. What had Alex done to recover so quickly? Why did she suddenly look like one of the most dangerous dark horses heading into the grass court season's biggest events? If you're enjoying following Alex's story as closely as we are, go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss a single update. It really helps this channel grow, and it means you'll be right here for every twist in this remarkable run. As the tennis calendar moved toward its most prestigious stretch, all eyes were on the players arriving for the grass season's biggest events. The grounds were already filled with anticipation, excitement, and the kind of energy only the sport's most iconic tournaments can generate. But when Alex made her appearance, the atmosphere seemed to shift. Those expecting to see a player still nursing the wounds of a painful defeat were left genuinely stunned. Alex looked completely different. She wasn't broken by the loss in Berlin. She wasn't tired or discouraged. Instead, she appeared focused, energized, and fully ready for whatever came next, carrying herself with the confidence of someone who believed her best tennis was still ahead of her. The player who had walked off Berlin's Steffi Graf Stadium just 48 hours earlier after a heartbreaking semifinal defeat seemed like a completely different person. Following the emotional end to her impressive Berlin run, many expected her to take some real time to recover and regroup. Instead, she arrived at her next event carrying a renewed sense of purpose. With her racket bag over her shoulder, a determined look on her face, and the disappointment of Berlin firmly behind her, Alex looked like a player ready for the biggest challenge of her career. The tears that had followed her defeat had been replaced by focus, confidence, and the unmistakable mindset of someone eager to prove her story was far from over. The buzz surrounding her arrival grew almost instantly. Fans, analysts, and fellow players couldn't quite believe how quickly she had turned the page after such an emotional loss. The reason was clear enough. Her remarkable performance in Berlin had lifted her to a career high position in the world rankings and secured her a historic Wimbledon seeding, making her the first Filipino player ever to earn a singles seed at a Grand Slam tournament. That achievement marked another milestone in a career that seemed to be reaching new heights with every single tournament she played. As she stepped onto the grounds ahead of Wimbledon, it became obvious that she wasn't simply hoping to participate this time. She was arriving with real momentum, real confidence, and growing expectations trailing behind her. The excitement only intensified further when attention shifted toward her doubles campaign. Alex was set to share the court with seven-time Grand Slam champion Venus Williams, creating one of the most talked about partnerships of the entire tournament season. The combination of a rising young star and one of the sport's greatest legends immediately captured the imagination of tennis fans everywhere. It was more than just a doubles pairing. It felt like a meeting of generations of experience and ambition, all unfolding on one of the sport's most prestigious stages. What had once been viewed as simply a valuable opportunity to gain more experience on grass had suddenly transformed into a historic moment for Filipino tennis. Just weeks earlier, few people could have predicted the remarkable rise Alex would experience during this grass court season. But after her stunning run of performances, everything had changed. She arrived carrying far more than expectations. She arrived as one of the genuine breakout stars of the summer. Her incredible run had propelled her from world number 35 all the way up to number 30 in the live rankings, securing her that historic Wimbledon seeding and making her the first Filipino player ever to earn a singles seed at a Grand Slam. It was a milestone that reflected not just her talent, but the rapid progress she had made against some of the sport's biggest names. The victories that fueled her rise were genuinely impossible to ignore. Alex had defeated a world number 2, overcome a former world number 3, and knocked off one of the hottest players on tour. With every win, Her confidence grew and her reputation expanded right along with it. By the time she stepped onto the grounds for the grass season's biggest tournament, she was no longer simply a promising young player looking to gain experience. She had become a genuine contender, a player capable of challenging the very best on tennis's biggest stage. What awaited Alex was no longer just another tournament. It was an opportunity to keep making history. The pressure would be greater, the spotlight brighter, and the expectations higher than ever before. Yet, after everything she had accomplished during the grass court season, she entered this next chapter with belief, momentum, and the quiet knowledge that she truly belonged among the sport's elite. She was no longer just a rising star. She had become one of the most compelling storylines of the entire season. Alex was no longer viewed as an underdog. She had become a legitimate threat. Standing across the net in her opening round match was a player who understood exactly how dangerous Alex had become. Elise Mertens, the experienced Belgian veteran ranked number 24 in the world, had beaten Alex twice before. Their most recent meeting at the Madrid Open, just 2 months earlier, had been particularly painful, a one-sided defeat that exposed the gap between where Alex was and where she wanted to be. Mertens had controlled that match from start to finish, leaving Alex searching for answers afterward. But this was a completely different stage now. The grass presented a new kind of challenge, and more importantly, Alex simply wasn't the same player who had walked onto the court in Madrid. The confidence she had built during her remarkable grass court campaign had transformed both her game and her mindset. The player showing up now carried real momentum, real belief, and the experience of having already defeated some of the biggest names in women's tennis. What once looked like a difficult first-round matchup now felt like an opportunity, a chance for redemption, a chance to prove just how far she had come. The tennis world took notice. The draw was loaded with elite talent, yet much of the attention centered squarely on Alex, whose rapid rise had become one of the most compelling stories in the sport. As anticipation grew around her singles campaign, another announcement sent shockwaves through the tennis community. Alongside her singles journey came a partnership that few could have imagined. Next to Alex's name in the doubles competition appeared one of the most iconic names in tennis history, Venus Williams, a 7-time Grand Slam singles champion, a multiple-time Wimbledon champion, and one of the most influential figures the sport has ever produced. Venus had inspired generations of players around the world. Her achievements on grass were legendary, and her impact on women's tennis reached far beyond trophies and titles. The pairing of Alex and Venus instantly became one of the biggest talking points of the season. For Alex, it represented a rare opportunity to share the court with a living legend whose career had helped shape the modern game. For fans, it felt like watching the torch pass between generations right in front of their eyes. The partnership marked the very first time the two would officially compete together, creating a dream scenario that captured attention across the entire tennis world. From Manila to London and beyond, excitement exploded as supporters imagined what the young Filipino star and the legendary champion might accomplish side by side. What had begun as anticipation around Alex's grass court debut had now evolved into something even bigger, a historic moment connecting the future of tennis with one of its greatest living icons. The announcement sparked an immediate wave of excitement across social media. Fans flooded their timelines with emotional reactions as they tried to process the reality of seeing Alex share a court with one of the sport's most iconic figures. One fan wrote that Venus Williams is a legend, and now she's partnering with Alex, joking that someone needed to tell them this wasn't just a dream. Another posted about the journey from practicing as a young girl in the Philippines to standing beside Venus Williams on one of tennis's biggest stages, calling it an incredible journey. Others described the partnership as a full circle moment, celebrating just how far Alex had come in such a short amount of time. For Alex herself, the opportunity meant far more than simply playing doubles at a big tournament. It represented the fulfillment of a dream she had carried for years. Earlier in the season, she had spoken openly about her admiration for the Williams sisters and the impact they'd had on women's tennis as a whole. She praised Venus as a trailblazer whose influence extended well beyond championships and trophies, someone who helped transform women's sports and inspired an entire generation to dream bigger than they thought possible. Now, instead of watching from afar, she would be standing right beside her as a teammate. Their opening round doubles match immediately became one of the most anticipated contests of the tournament. But the fascination surrounding the partnership went far beyond rankings. results, or scorelines. It was the meeting of two entirely different generations of tennis excellence. On one side stood Venus, a champion whose career had spanned decades and helped shape the modern era of the sport. On the other stood Alex, one of tennis's brightest young stars, carrying the hopes of an entire nation and representing the future of the game. Tennis analysts quickly highlighted exactly why this partnership was so compelling. The combination of experience and youth created a unique dynamic rarely seen on tour. Venus had competed on the biggest stages imaginable, handling pressure, expectations, and historic moments throughout her legendary career. Alex, meanwhile, was living through a breakthrough season that had thrust her into the global spotlight almost overnight. The opportunity to learn directly from one of the greatest champions in tennis history was, by any measure, invaluable. As the tournament approached, the partnership became about far more than just doubles tennis. It became a story of mentorship, inspiration, and the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next. Every practice session, every conversation, and every point they played together carried real significance. Fans around the world knew they were witnessing something special, a rising star learning alongside a true legend of the game. And as Alex prepared for the biggest matches of her young career, there was perhaps no better guide than Venus Williams standing right beside her on the court. The lessons extended well beyond simple tactics and strategy. Venus had spent decades competing under the brightest lights in tennis, overcoming challenges, handling immense pressure, and setting standards that inspired generations of players who came after her. Now, Alex had the rare privilege of experiencing that knowledge firsthand. It was the realization of a childhood dream, one she had spoken about openly long before it ever became reality. The tennis community quickly embraced this story. Players, analysts, and fans alike celebrated the unlikely partnership between a living legend and one of the sport's fastest, rising stars, many pointing to the unique blend of experience and youthful ambition that made the pairing so compelling. Excitement around their opening round doubles match only continued to grow as fans everywhere prepared to watch two generations unite on the same side of the net. Yet while the doubles partnership captured plenty of headlines, Alex's singles campaign was quietly making an even bigger statement. Just days later, she stepped onto the court and delivered one of the most important victories of her career. The scoreboard told the story clearly, a straight sets triumph over Elise Mertens. The win was decisive, convincing, and deeply symbolic. Just weeks earlier, Mertens had handed Alex a genuinely painful defeat in Madrid. This time, the result was completely different. Alex controlled the match from start to finish, played with real confidence throughout, and secured a victory that many believed confirmed her arrival as a legitimate force on the WTA Tour. The significance of that win stretched well beyond simple revenge. It felt like validation. Critics who had questioned whether her remarkable run during the grass court season was truly sustainable suddenly had far fewer arguments left to make. Alex had already proven herself against elite competition throughout the season, but defeating a player who had previously dominated her demonstrated just how much her game had genuinely evolved. The improvements were visible in every part of her performance, in her movement, her confidence, her shot selection, and perhaps most importantly, in her belief in herself. The timing could hardly have been better. Wimbledon was just around the corner, and Alex's ranking continued climbing. After beginning the grass court swing sitting outside the top 30, she had surged into seeding position through a series of genuine breakthrough performances. Her latest victory strengthened her standing even further and ensured she would arrive at the All England club, carrying significant momentum. Every win reinforced the growing belief that she truly belonged among tennis's elite. But rankings and milestones were only part of this story. Throughout her rise, Alex remained focused on something much larger than individual achievement. She had often spoken about the pride she felt representing the Philippines on the world stage. Every victory carried meaning not just for her own career, but for the millions of fans supporting her journey from back home. As Wimbledon approached, that sense of purpose stayed at the center of everything she did. The wins, the rankings, and the growing recognition were important, but for Alex, the deeper motivation never really changed: to compete with pride, to inspire the next generation of players, and to keep making history for Philippine tennis. Her run through the earlier grass court events had become the final warm-up before the biggest stage of all. Alex, often referred to simply by her first name in headlines by this point, arrived with momentum, pressure, and expectation all colliding at once. She had entered as a wild card in the singles draw, while also forming that sensational doubles partnership with Venus Williams. It was a genuine dream pairing, marking the first time the two would officially compete together on the same side of the net. Both players had received wild card entries into their respective main draws. But for Alex, this was something far beyond a simple invitation. It was a milestone she had once only imagined from afar. Growing up, Alex had watched the Williams sisters dominate on grass, studying their power, discipline, and precision closely. She had built parts of her own game around what she learned from watching them, never once imagining that one day she would actually share a court with one of them, not as an opponent, but as a partner. Earlier in the season, she had described that moment with real, simple honesty, saying she was really, really excited, calling Venus a trailblazer who had done so much for the sport and continued to inspire everyone around her. Now that admiration had turned into reality. Their opening doubles match was set against a strong opposing pair, scheduled for a Tuesday afternoon slot. But the true significance of the pairing went far beyond any scoreboard. For a legendary veteran in her mid-40s and a 21-year-old rising star, this was about legacy and mentorship just as much as it was about competition. It was about experience meeting ambition and history meeting the future. Every point they played together carried the weight of something larger than tennis itself, the passing of knowledge from one generation to the next. While attention focused on the doubles draw, Alex's singles journey continued building towards something even bigger. The road ahead had already been shaped by her breakthrough performances across the grass season. Every earlier tournament had simply been the beginning, and this next stage was now the true destination. The most prestigious stage in tennis awaited her, where Alex would walk onto the courts as a seeded player for the very first time in her career. That achievement alone carried enormous historic weight. She had become the first Filipino player ever to earn a singles seed at a Grand Slam, a milestone that symbolized years of progress and sacrifice. With it came the hopes of well over 100 million Filipinos, a responsibility she had grown used to carrying through injuries, ranking pressure, constant travel demands, and moments of real doubt. She had continued pushing forward regardless. From her earlier grass court events all the way through Berlin, every match had shaped her into the player she was becoming. Now, standing on the edge of the biggest tournament of the season, she was no longer just a rising talent. She was a genuine contender stepping into the sport's biggest arena. The grass season was still very much alive. Her earlier storylines were still unfolding, and the biggest challenge of all still lay just ahead. Through all of it, Alex remained remarkably steady. Her journey had already defied expectations at nearly every turn, but she wasn't finished yet. The next challenge was always waiting, and she looked genuinely ready for it. She had arrived at each new event not as a defeated player, but as a woman on a mission. Entering that key tournament on a wild card, she was immediately set for a high-stakes opening round clash against world number 24 Lise Mertens, a matchup that carried real history, real tension, and plenty of unfinished business. But Alex was no longer the same player who had once struggled to find answers against top-tier opposition. Her rise had been steady, calculated, and genuinely undeniable. She had climbed from world number 35 up to number 30 in the rankings, just one spot shy of her career high of number 29, achieved earlier in the year. More importantly, she had now secured a position comfortably inside the top 32, guaranteeing herself a seated spot at the sport's biggest event. It was a milestone that reflected not just good form, but real consistency across one of the most demanding stretches of her entire career. Every match, every point, and every breakthrough had brought her one step closer to tennis's biggest stage. And then came the biggest shock of that particular tournament, when the doubles draw was finally released and revealed that Alex would be partnering with none other than seven-time Grand Slam champion Venus Williams, a moment that turned an already remarkable season into something that felt, to fans everywhere, genuinely once in a lifetime.